Platformer is a timeless term used to describe a game in which the player jumps and maneuvers past obstacles in order to reach the end goal. It's this broad, malleable description that allows the concept of platformers to constantly be tweaked and adjusted by game developers in order to create dozens of subgenres. 3D platformers were created, such as Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. Metroidvanias were made, like Ori and the Blind Forest or Super Metroid. Extraordinarily difficult action platformers in the forms of Celeste and Super Meat Boy were published, and many more. The idea of what a platformer is varies from game to game. Super Mario Galaxy and Shovel Knight look like two vastly different breeds, yet can both be categorized under this one label. Many of gaming's greatest innovations have formed within the genre of platformers. Many games that broke new boundaries, set new standards, and stood out as masterpieces are platformers, and perhaps a trio of them that accomplished these things to a remarkable extent, that truly pushed the idea of what a platformer was at the time, that raised the bar higher than what in the 90s was unfathomable, and that went down in history as a genre-defining series, was the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. The original Donkey Kong released in 1981 before the Primate adopted a much more realistic appearance years later as Donkey Kong Country released on the SNES. Two sequels followed shortly after the monumental release before the series fell dormant until the release of the Wii when Donkey Kong Country Returns released, and Tropical Freeze years later. These two latter titles quite evidently took inspiration from the original trilogy of Rare's phenomenal platformers, with many levels, gimmicks, and even songs returning from the 90s in much higher quality. And it's not hard to see why. Donkey Kong Countries 1, 2, and 3 are fantastic journeys that deserve to be referenced and preserved in the form of their modern sequels. From the depth and detail of their graphics to the intuitively smooth feeling of their controls, every aspect of these titles is one worth talking about. So let's get started. When the original Donkey Kong Country is booted up, perhaps what is first noticed is the graphics. The SNES was incapable of rendering 3D objects, and as such, all of its games were either two-dimensional or pseudo-3D. Games such as Star Fox and Kirby's Dream Course looked as though they were three-dimensional, but in truth weren't. Donkey Kong Country, while being a 2D platformer at heart, was like these titles in the sense that it used both layered backgrounds and 3D models converted into 2D sprites to look as though it were 3D. What separates it from Star Fox and the others is that Star Fox looks like this, and Donkey Kong Country looks like this. While in reality, the Donkey Kong Country games boil down to running from left to right for a few hours, their advanced graphics and realistic art styles make them feel like true journeys through the wilderness. Every single level present within these three games contains a unique, aesthetically pleasing background, and oftentimes even beautiful foreground elements such as heavy rain or snowfall. Not one stage feels as though it didn't take full advantage of the hardware it was given to work with. Many levels contained within these games have become burned into my brain thanks to their gorgeous presentations, and it doesn't stop there. The overworlds of these games are just as impressive with their presentation, with Donkey Kong Country 3's not only being pleasing to look at, but even having its own hidden collectibles. It's hard to explain in words just how stunning these games were and still are, and this is without bringing up other elements which I'll be covering soon. It's also worth briefly noting that some of the official artwork for these games is just as beautiful. Many of the old renders for these titles have such interesting styles that are hard to describe but so entrancing to look at, to the point where it feels as though I'm being transported to another world when gazing at them. I'm not one to exaggerate within my videos. These games just give me a feeling unlike any others. I may touch more on graphics throughout this video, but for now I want to move on to gameplay, objectively the most vital element of any video game. Controlling the Kongs themselves is as simple as it could possibly be, with only two buttons needed to run, jump, pick up and hurl barrels, roll, glide, smash into the ground, and much more. I'm one who consistently uses the excuse that the controls didn't sit right with me. Ocarina of Time, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Metroid, and most other games that released before the Wii were ones that I held off on for a long time because of their controls. And yet the Donkey Kong Country games, despite their difficulty, were three with which I didn't encounter this issue. It feels satisfying to roll through enemies, perform precise jumps, and glide through bonus areas. Not only are the main characters a blast to comb levels with, but so too are the vast array of animal friends, all of which come paired with their own unique style of play. Rambi the Rhino allows the player to rush through levels without a second thought for their own safety, Espresso the Ostrich can float past enemies with ease, reaching heights is made easy thanks to Rattly the Rattlesnake. These animal friends opened up so many possibilities, and I was amazed at how many different ways I could traverse levels in such old games. They all have their own perks and shortcomings, which makes it so enjoyable to find a new one and test them out. It's not only the numerous ways to traverse the levels that makes them so memorable, but the designs of the levels themselves. As I mentioned whilst discussing graphics, every level truly feels as though the player is exploring a lively expanse of wilderness, filled with jungles, caves, tundras, mills, theme parks, and everything in between. The harmonic balance between the gameplay and level design creates a smooth, enjoyable experience in even the most brutal of levels, and believe me, some of them are rough. Whether I'm thrown into a tropical rainforest, a treacherous canyon, or even an industrialized factory, it actually feels like I'm in those places thanks to their designs. Forest levels have more natural looking enemies, vines to swing across, and unpredictable terrain, while factories contain more uniform ground, industrial based hazards such as steel barrels of burning fuel, and other technological traps. Through not only the graphics and the layout, but the hazards and gimmicks encountered as well, these levels feel more alive than any others I played from this era. And this feeling is pushed even further with the addition of dozens of collectibles to discover. But there is one specific type of stage I've yet to mention, a dreaded format that brings nothing but lost lives and suffering. The minecart levels. This will be the one negative topic you'll hear me address in this video. In the original Donkey Kong Country, I found their plain backgrounds bland and boring and the levels to be far too unforgiving. And that's all I have to say. The next two games actually varied this format up with interesting settings and far more variety, which provided a fix to my only issue with the original game. Aside from the select few minecart levels in the first game of the trilogy, not one level in the expansive worlds of these games failed to bring me joy. Up until now, I've talked about these games as a trilogy very broadly, hardly mentioning specifics from the three. But now I want to not only bring to light specific characters from each of the three games, but also their transitions from one game to the next. You see, certain characters such as the Brother Bears and Swanky Kong, while their presence is certainly welcome and their designs are charming, only appear in one title before being banished to the void of dead Nintendo characters along with the entire cast of F-Zero. Some characters, however, appear throughout the trilogy, such as Funky Kong, Cranky Kong, and Wrinkly Kong, and reprise their roles. Cranky generally serves as a comic relief character as well as a living reference to the retro era. Funky, being a mechanic, always provides new ways to traverse the world quickly, and Wrinkly's purpose is saving progress. What I really love, however, is how the characters, notably Cranky and Wrinkly, actually age between games. It makes 2 and 3 feel like actual canonical sequels and not just more of the same game. King K. Rool, the series' primary villain, also serves to help this trilogy feel like a continuous storyline. Each game he goes under a new alias and adopts a new style of combat. Once again, I feel it necessary to commend these games for being so far ahead of their time. Their characters actually have character, and are so fun to interact with and encounter. I have one last major game aspect I'd like to discuss, and this is the one that inspired this entire video. Game soundtracks are of phenomenal importance to me. Tracks such as Farewell from Celeste, Walking with You from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and many more still manage to give me chills because of their importance in my life. The soundtracks from all three of the Donkey Kong Country games contain many tracks like these. Aquatic Ambience from 1, Sticker Bush Symphony from 2, Cascade Capers from 3, and many other tracks from these OSTs reach a timeless level of beauty. David Wise, the game's composer, was quite evidently aware of the compression of the SNES, and worked with that compression in mind to create something amazing. Yes, certain OSTs get me more nostalgic than this one, and others get me more emotional, but no single track in any other video games compare to the feeling I get when listening to Sticker Bush Symphony, Forest Interlude, or other similar songs. Many of the game's tracks give off a somber, nostalgic feeling that I simply can't describe in words. The tracks almost transcend the games they were composed for and hold up as masterpieces on their own. Wading through the waters of Donkey Kong Island is fun enough on its own, but when combined with the melancholic melodies of aquatic ambience, it becomes a peaceful, serene, and honestly, otherworldly experience. The music of these games perfectly complement the environments being explored, and the retro feeling created by the limitations and compression of the hardware at the time actually helps tracks feel more unique, rather than hindering their ability to achieve their full potential. I've never heard any soundtracks compared to the beautiful serenity of these three. Those are all the major topics I wish to cover, but there's one final, very minor thing I need to discuss, and that is charm, the likes of which these games are packed with. From the quirky cast and their characteristic idle animations, and the semblance of freedom in exploring such a vast world, to all the different wacky breeds of Kremlings to discover and bosses to battle, not one aspect of these games feels lacking in charm, and not 1 second playing them feels like time wasted. Donkey Kong Country reformatted Donkey Kong as a series, making the transition from a two-dimensional test of endurance found in arcades to a 2.5D platforming masterpiece with revolutionary graphics, stunning visuals, and a truly moving soundtrack. The original was so fantastic that it even inspired 2 sequels, which are arguably better than their predecessor. As for me, I believe them all to hold their own strengths and weaknesses. 1 paved the way for the others, 2 contains what is in my opinion the best OST, and 3 the best levels. It's hard for me to separate and rank them, because they're all fantastic even to this day. These games set the standard for Donkey Kong Country Returns and the series' latest installment, Tropical Freeze, both of which are 2 of my favorite platformers of all time. Yet unlike with games such as Mario Kart 64 and Double Dash, which now feel inferior to play and obsolete thanks to their much improved sequels, there's still some form of novelty and unwavering enjoyment in playing these 3 classics. Even if their age is evident and statistically better sequels have come to be, I will never play these games without feeling an unrivaled sense of tranquility. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've never covered such a broad topic with so much to discuss, so I apologize if my thoughts weren't as organized as they could have been, but I truly appreciate you all for watching.